I think I'm a target because I am a soft touch. I help people. That's what I was taught to do. It's what I've always done.
We knew there was a problem here. We knew that lady didn't have good intentions. And in fact, when we left, I knew that all of our lives were changed forever.
I must have met her somewhere, somehow. It wasn't a significant enough meeting to totally connect in my head, but somewhere along the line, yeah, I've got to have run into her somewhere, but I couldn't tell you when or where.
So it was just a few days before Father's Day weekend that we got a call from one of the sisters saying Helen had somebody staying with her, but it was somebody that they had never heard the name before, weren't aware of, and we said, okay, we'll stop by Helens.
She had called and told me she'd had my number from when I had been up north helping somebody else move, which is entirely possible. I do remember an event like that. I don't remember her at all. And that she'd remembered me and I'd given her my number and call if she needed anything. I don't usually do that, but I could have at that point. And she sounded like she was in trouble. We were kind of taught to help people, so I did.
She said that she had met Helen 5 years ago or something in a grocery store, and they just connected because she had gone through some stuff. Helen was still grieving the loss of her husband, and this lady said they became really tight friends, and ever since then, they had been communicating, they had visited, had lunch. Once we got going on all this and investigating, there was no evidence that she had ever called her.
It was first or second day, whichever day we had gone shopping, that she totally showed a personality after we were home that was not a good one.
Helen and this lady went to the grocery store and bought groceries. And it's when they got home that night is when later in the evening she reproached Helen about, that you owe me all this money. I've used all my food stamp money. I've, filled your refrigerator with food. You've given me nothing in return.
You don't stand in somebody's bedroom door in the late hours and basically threaten them. And I knew that I really would be wise not to do anything at that moment. Well, then she left to go to sleep. I called my financial planner, see if I could take some money out and have it put in my bank account.
And the financial advisor had a long-term relationship with Helen and recognized the request as unusual and indicated that she would call Helen again the next day.
While we were there, Helen's financial advisor called and was asking for Helen, and I answered the phone. And I didn't know this person, and I asked, well, why are you calling? And she said, well, I'm Helen's financial advisor. And Helen called me last night after hours, said she needed money. This lady was demanding money from her, and she wanted me to withdraw $5,000 out of my 401k so she could pay her off to get her to go away.
Well, I'm sure she had a clue from what I was saying that something was not quite right.
The squatter was there, and we simply said, no, you're done. Get your stuff. You have to leave. You're not welcome here. You're squatting, and you're taking advantage of Helen. And it just kind of evolved, and she said, no, I live here. This is my residence, and I'm not leaving. So that's when we called the police. As soon as the police walked in and I told them the name, she said, oh, okay, we know her. And they talked to her for a couple hours trying to convince her to leave, and she refused to leave. At the end of the day, the police said that there was nothing they could do because she was invited in. She'd been there for over 2 weeks, and she was claiming residence, and by Minnesota law, they could not force her to leave. Finally, we just decided, okay, if you're not leaving, then we're taking Helen with us. And we took Helen out to our house until we could figure out what to do from that.
So I first heard about Helen's situation when her niece called our helpline, and I answered the phone and talked with her about concerns she'd been having with her aunt and what was going on. The situation was unfolding very quickly, the concerns were rising, and I affirmed that there were some red flags that she was talking about and that we absolutely could provide support and help convene some responses that might be appropriate for them to consider.
I did my own sleuthing of what kind of what addresses are associated with this person. One particular immediate prior address had been the home of an older individual that the squatter had reported having cared for that individual until that individual passed away. And when that individual passed away, that squatter was no longer able to stay in that home. And so immediate prior narrative did have echoes of what I perceived the squatter as trying to develop for being in Helen's home at that time.
You know, I was pretty frustrated and lost faith in a lot of this, but we stumbled across the Minnesota Elder Justice Center, and we had someone that we were put in contact with that knew how to handle the situation, knew how to take what had happened and position it to Helen's advantage.
I recommended that the family changed gears toward another process of requesting a harassment restraining order. So that petition was drafted up and within 24 hours had been granted by the court. Law enforcement served the petition on the squatter and made sure that the squatter left the home. At that point, it had become illegal for the squatter to be in Helen's home or to attempt to make any direct or indirect contact with her. So that was a significant victory in changing the power dynamics, that while the squatter was in the home, or the squatter was professing access to information and knowledge of Helen, it was very much a circumstance where it felt like the squatter had control.
Because of the lady approaching Helen that evening and threatening her and demanding money, we were able to get the harassment order. But what you have to realize is, you know, Helen came to stay with us middle of June. It wasn't until August before we could get through all the legal process and get the squatter out of the house. When we picked up Helen and brought her home that day, one of the things that really triggered that we realized how bad things were is, you know, we lived an hour away and we were on the way home and her phone never stopped going off. It was either a text message or a call, something every 2 minutes was coming in. People trying to sell homeowners warranty coverage, trying to sell auto coverage, realtors trying to get her to sell her house. She had multiple applications in process for refinancing the house. She had 3 different homeowners policies she was paying on to pay for, you know, your homeowner repairs, appliance repairs. She had multiple car warranty things active. In the last 6 months prior to that, she had opened up 6 or 7 life insurance policies. They just kept calling, and because of her diagnosis of dementia and cognitive issues, she wasn't able to keep all this straight.
And the cleanest route forward in that experience of scam calls was to shut down the account with a new number, get a new number, and have that clean slate, because it was going to be easier to move forward for Helen with a clean number that only those trusted others in Helen's life would have.
The me now does not let people in at all. And that's kind of a shame. Not how I was brought up originally, but you go with the changes of society as time goes on.
You trust but verify. Don't ever accept anybody for anything as to what they say, what they send you in an email, text message. Don't use links that people send you. There's trust there, but you gotta verify and have either a family network or a group or somebody and talk through when you get these calls and just bounce things off people.
The more we're seeing in this world of elder abuse, the more research is showing that the prevention to elder abuse is relationships. and the healing from elder abuse is relationships. So knowing that those are the two things that the community at large can focus on is really impactful, because not only does it help prevent, but it also helps heal when it does happen.
So going back, reflecting on Helen's family and their considerations about how we could have been more proactive in the moments where they observe signs of maybe Helen does not have as firm of an understanding of what's going on with her accounts anymore, to have that courageous conversation in the context of the fact that having that conversation now, taking preventative measures now, is a better path for preserving independence than letting those concerns linger unaddressed.
Having these conversations early on in the family about what are their wishes for aging healthy and happy and safely, talking about those preventative measures and making some safety plans before any crisis happens is really effective. So identify who are the safe and trusted and skilled people in their life that they would like to come to the table to help them make their own decisions for as long as possible is really the way to maintain autonomy and safety.
There were some things I had seen 6 months earlier, a year earlier, when she'd asked me to look at stuff, and some things that we had recognized and the sisters had recognized from her memory capability. We weren't proactive. We tried to get her help, but we didn't really push it. I know this is a very hard thing to do, but if you see signs of memory issues or see signs of people struggling financially, offer help. Don't be afraid to step up and try and guide them.
Helen had these relationships in her life, and even then, without those coming together and responding to her, it could still happen. So she had neighbors she was well connected to. Her financial planner was a friend who was able to have enough insight into these really unusual spending habits and requests that were happening to be concerned, to the law enforcement officer who did a fantastic job of community policing in the neighborhood. Thankfully with Helen, after 10 months from first engaging with her, there is healing happening through those same relationships that first identified problems. And she's got the support in place to help her make decisions, stay healthy and happy, even though that's meant some challenges and some changes in her life.